Let's move on to some more about evidence, and let's talk about using an alternate light source with our photography. So ALS in our profession stands for alternate light source. Often we call them forensic light sources. So the alternate light source, the one that you see us use most of the time is the blue light. It helps us to find evidence. We can find body fluids such as semen and saliva and urine. It can help us find blood stain, but it does something different. It makes it actually look darker instead of glowing. Now, when you have the body fluids, they're actually going to glow, and I'm going to show you some examples. I have a couple of photographs I can show you that do that. Now, there are other frequencies, and they work for other things, like finding accelerants at an arson scene, things of that nature. But the blue light is what we use almost all the time. Also, we use it when we're using fluorescent powders and we're dusting for fingerprints. So that we would use the blue light as well. Now, the thing about these, and so this is a kit. Let me just talk about the kit here for a second, and then we'll move on to how it works. This is the lamp itself. It's like a big flashlight. And then these are the different filters that go over the end. And so you choose the filter to get the kind of light that you need. Now, what you're also going to need to have is a cutoff or barrier filter for your eyesight, because if you put on the blue filter, all you see is blue light. You're not going to really see what the blue light does. In order to see what the blue light does, you have to cut the blue light out of your vision to see what the blue light just did. And so to get the blue light out of your vision, you use orange or sometimes amber goggles. So this is another one. And if I turn this on, the first position is white light. The second position is a blue light. And then the third position is blue again, but brighter. All right, so this is the alternate light source I use. I got a couple of them so that I can use them for photography as well. I have two, so I can use them like on a copy stand type situation. But they're really handy at a crime scene as well. So how do these really work? So this incoming excitation light, that is our blue light. All right, so I've got my blue light and it's shining on something. So let's just say that we have dusted a fingerprint with fluorescent powders. That light comes and it hits and reflects off. Now, when it reflects, some of that blue light reflects off, right? But at the same time, it excites the fluorescent powder. It causes it to glow or fluoresce. Well, that also is going to reflect. The problem is, in all that blue reflection, we really can't see the fluorescence from the fingerprint. So what we need to do is put a blocking filter, often called a barrier filter, between the reflecting blue light and our eyes. Okay? Now, you don't put the filter over here because that light has to hit the fluorescent powder and do its thing. But we want to cut off the reflection before it hits our eye. And then all we will see is the fluorescence and not the blue light. That's the theory. So here is a black and white photograph of fluorescence. This was a tile with kind of multicolor to it. And so I dusted it with a fluorescent powder, hit it with the alternate light source, and put the barrier filter in front of the lens. Because remember, when you're photographing something, you're just repeating for the camera what you did to be able to see something. So for me to be able to see the result, I need to put the barrier filter, my goggles on. So here for my blue light, what I'm going to need to do is wear these goggles, right? So for my lens, I'm just going to have to put a orange barrier filter, or you could have a screw-on orange filter. So here's an orange filter. I can just put that over my lens. And then here is the result. Now, what we will typically do, as I mentioned before, is change our colored photographs to grayscale so that we can get better detail. And so that's what we have here is a grayscale photograph, but you don't necessarily have to. Here's a photograph taken with a fluorescent powder with an alternate light source. Another situation with fingerprints, what we can do is glue fume an object to find fingerprints. And when you see the fingerprints after glue fuming, you go ahead and use a dye stain on that fingerprint. So it's really quite simple. The glue fuming develops prints on your surface of whatever it has to be of a non-porous surface like glass or plastic. And it will then fix these prints. It actually polymerizes these prints. It takes the moisture and oil from the print and hardens it, and you see it as a white fingerprint. Then you take a dye stain, which is in liquid form, and you just squirt it all over the fingerprint, that white fingerprint you now have. And then you rinse it off and you hit it with the alternate light source, and you have a result like this. We can see an incredible amount of detail in the fingerprint here on the screen. Alternately, instead of using dye stain, once you have glue fumed something, you can just dust it with powder and then lift it, and there you go. But a lot of people like the dye stain. If you dye stain it, you do have to photograph it. That's the way we preserve it. Another place that we use the alternate light source is to find body fluids at a crime scene or on our evidence. So here is a photograph of some underwear. And we can kind of tell there's a stain here. But if we go ahead and hit it with the alternate light source and use the orange barrier filter, this is the actual result that we will then see. This is with semen. With urine, it's fainter. Saliva, very faint. But semen does fluoresce quite readily. Now notice that I have used a special scale. If we go back to just the white light photograph, you can see it's a fluorescent scale. So I have a fluorescent scale here. We're using the alternate light source. You need the scale to actually show up. So this one glows. So that's the alternate light source. We can use the alternate light source to find evidence at a crime scene. We can use it to photograph fingerprints on multicolored surfaces using fluorescent powder. The photography of this is quite simple. If you can see it, you can photograph it. You just have to reproduce for the camera whatever you had to do to be able to see it yourself. So in this case, I have to use my alternate light source and my orange goggles. And if I want to see the scale at the same time, my fluorescent scale. So I need these three things in order to see the result that we have on the screen there. Now, to document it, I just do the same thing for the camera. Instead of using electronic flash or ambient light, I'm going to use the alternate light source, the blue light, as my lighting source. And then so that the camera can actually see the result, the fluorescence, I'm going to put an orange filter over the lens of the camera. And in order to be able to have a scale in the photograph, if I need one, I'm going to put the fluorescent scale on the same plane as my evidence. I take the picture. Now, this is when I would definitely be checking my review screen. I want to make sure my focus is just dead on. I'm going to want to, and by the way, resist focusing on the scale. Now you're trying to get the scale on the same plane as your evidence. But remember, on a lot of these things, our depth of field is very shallow. When your depth of field is shallow, if you focus on the scale and the scale isn't exactly on the same plane as your evidence may end up being slightly out of focus because of your shallow depth of field. It would be better that your scale just be a tad out of focus as long as your evidence is in sharp focus. So especially something like a fingerprint. I don't want my scale to be perfect if that means my fingerprint will be slightly out of focus. I need my fingerprint to be the best.